Alright guys, let's take a little time to take a look at this 11 round negotiator cylinder, also from Nearly New Models. The negotiator was, kind of a letdown actually. The idea of having such a huge pistol with so much wasted space, only shooting 8 rounds, which is, you can now get hammer shot cylinders with the same capacity with a whole lot less wasted space. But the introduction of an 11 round cylinder makes this a little bit more practical for people who may not want to cut down a Lawbringer to get, the 12 rounds from that. So, also this kit comes with a prefabbed spacer for the spring to get a little bit extra power out of it. I ran this over the chronograph and it was averaging kind of between 40 to 50, sometimes it would get above 50, so kind of what you expect from the Zombie Strike, Doomlands, those offshoot themed blasters. So let's open this up real quick. Okay, I've had this blaster apart several times recently. This was actually donated to me from the arena because it was broken, so I did have to make a few repairs, but it's now operating correctly, and the performance I was getting on the chronograph seems kind of par for this style. So really what all is involved with swapping the cylinder is there's 2 screws here. The hole kind of holds in the whole internal setup, and you just kind of these 4 studs here are rather snug, so I did kind of use a screwdriver to help pry that up, and everything else pops out in a single assembly. There's this piece that often falls out that is just basically the kind of a hub that the little rotation mech rides on. But then you just take this cylinder out and drop that one in. Now this one is printed in some kind of other material on the rotation mech. It's slightly softer. In fact, I can actually scratch it with my fingernail, which is kind of interesting. Not sure why a different material was used, but it is seems to be a lot finer print, so it is smoother, so maybe that's the reason, whereas this is still kind of the usual somewhat coarser grade, I suppose. This here being a kind of an interesting finer material. There's a bit of cleanup done on this front rotation point. You can kind of see, it's hard to see in the blackness, but it has been cleaned up just a little bit, which is nice, since that's what it actually rotates on. So we'll drop that guy in, set that guy in there, and we'll go ahead and pop this guy up here. Spring off, so we can squeeze the spacer on there. Spacer just has an X shape in it that matches the shape of the little spring rod there. Squeeze the spring back up, and there's a wider kind of a foot on this spring, so you want to make sure that's facing down. Force him up there. And then make sure this guy's aligned correctly with the little stub sticking up, and we'll just make sure this guy's correct there. Everybody's hunky-dory. Dang, spring popped out. Spring was fighting just a little bit, and that little extra bit of pre-compression that the spacer gave us makes it not want to sit in quite as good, but will not be swayed by that. So now we can add these screws back in. Now the print quality on the cylinder did seem to be pretty good. There's a few little strings inside the barrels in the cylinder, but nothing really crazy. They were very fine, and I really didn't need to do any cleaning up, so that was a nice bonus. And the dart fit in each of the barrels was rather consistent and did feel pretty good. One note, I did have to trim a little bit on the shell, just right above and below the cylinder. It's just a tiny rib right along here, right along here, and I just trimmed that off with a X-Acto knife real quick. Nothing shows, it's just a little lip that happened to be there, so not really anything to be concerned with. Something you could easily trim off with even a file or sandpaper or any kind of utility knife or anything, so not really a big concern there. And that just allows it, since the cylinder is slightly larger, to fit the extra rounds in there, extra barrels. It is rather snug. It does rotate freely. The friction I'm feeling, I believe, is just the force of the foam on the seal, but the barrel does seem to rotate freely enough after having trimmed off that little bit top and bottom of the cylinder. So I think we'll load this up real quick. It does seem to rotate reliably, so that's nice. So, alright. Let's put some darts in it, put it over the chronograph, and see how it feels. Now the dart fit is a bit snug, but these are waffle darts, which oftentimes have a slightly thicker foam than regular Elite darts. So let's put this over the chronograph. Okay, this is, I'm going to try it with standard Elite darts. It didn't want to fire about 3 or 4 of them. The ones that were firing pretty good, but I think the tolerances might be just a bit snug for some of these aftermarket darts. So I'm going to run a load of Elites through, since I believe that's what is modeled based off of. Okay, so running the Elites through there, they were firing a lot better. I went from getting a few shots in the mid to upper 50s, all the way into a couple low to mid 70 shots on a couple of these. So again, some of the barrels did not fire, so I think I will have to go through and dial in a few of those just with some sandpaper and see if I can loosen those up a little bit to where they will accept standard and also aftermarket darts. My repair that I repaired on this has unrepaired itself, but it did operate long enough to actually see the effects of the barrel and the effects of the added spacer. I do think that a little bit of tuning on this, it does seal good. Every time it does fire, you are getting a good seal. I'm not hearing any hiss through the seal there or anything. Getting good positive pops on the firing. So yeah, I do think with a little bit of fine tuning on some of these barrels, and some of these are actually fit really nice, were just real good fit. Some of them were just a tad snug, and I think there's about 3 of them on this print that were a bit too snug. But no, with that extra spacer, if this is a rather large sidearm, as has been discussed before. But I have seen, and I wish I could remember where it was, somebody actually did cut the top and bottom off one of these things, and it did make it look an awful lot better. And so to be able to have an 11-round sidearm, or if you're one of those guys that dual wield stuff, to be able to have 2 of these with 11 rounds each, especially if you can get it firing in the 70s range, it actually is pretty good. Hammer shots are capable of getting slightly better, I believe, but that's also with finely tuned barrels and stuff like that. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised with this so far. The piece I did repair on this was one that I was a bit suspect on. It is on some of the plastic that doesn't usually like being repaired. So yeah, it does. I actually like the cylinder enough. I think I'm going to go out and try to find a negotiator. I had to get one from the arena because I couldn't find one locally. But I actually think this would make it actually worth spending the money on, just to get the negotiator, to have 11 rounds, on your hip or in your offhand or whatever. So yeah, I'll make sure I put the product link. It is an eBay listing from Nearly New Models on eBay. I'll go ahead and post the link and all the information I can have, or all the information I can find on it. But yeah, this if this matches your playstyle or your needs for your loadout or anything like that, actually been pretty impressed. Between the kit actually doesn't include the cylinder and the spacer as well. So yeah, tidy little kit, and something that's that easy to drop in. I'm very, like I said, pleasantly surprised. I think it's a winner. Okay, quick note, I took some time off camera to take a little sandpaper and clean up some of the snugger barrels. And while that did improve the dart fit, I was still having issues where it just wasn't firing. It was, I could hear the air getting delivered, and the darts sometimes would come out a little bit, and sometimes would just barely plop out of the barrel. And so I checked the sealing surface on the back of the cylinder and everything. It turns out that because the cylinder is a larger diameter than the original, it moves the relationship of the barrel with the air restrictor. So where the air restrictor has that little tab that sticks out and is usually hits kind of the leading edge of the dart, right at the end of the foam, because the cylinder is essentially moved up a little higher, it's hitting right in the middle of the hole, I believe, so it's barely opening the air restrictor, if at all, and so there's enough to basically push the dart kind of out of the barrel, but not actually projecting it all the way. So I took out the air restrictor, as technically recommended in the installation video by the creator. I tried to second guess that, much to my disappointment. I took the air restrictor out, and now it's firing super reliably. It's firing even the thicker foam darts, the AccuFakes and waffles and things like that. It's shooting upwards of high 70s. I even bounced a few off of 80, 81, which is really, really good for a little sidearm. I say little sidearm as, that's a bit relative, I suppose. I just became a whole lot more impressed with the piece. The issues were obviously my fault, a misinstallation of sorts. Make sure you take out the air restrictor, and I've run quite a few darts through this since. I would still recommend cleaning up some of the barrels because, like I said, some of them were snugger than others, and because it's printed, you have a very, very, very rough surface with layers being perpendicular to the dart travel. So you are getting a lot of excess friction that way. Obviously don't open it up too much, but there's a little bit of room for improvement. The barrels that I did sand are noticeably smoother and just easier to push the darts in without, wrinkling up the darts. So yeah, very, very impressed with this piece now. Like I said, the issues I had were my fault, but yeah, essentially I now have a pistol. I can, a single-handed pistol with 11 shots that can shoot, upwards of 80 FPS, which isn't huge, but as a sidearm, that's pretty darn good. So, yes, very, very, like I said, kind of a bit of a refinement of my earlier opinions. Very impressed, very impressed. In fact, a guy might go crazy and buy a second one, but we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. So, thanks for watching. Sorry about the miscommunication, but one more time, all the buying information will be in the description box below. So, thanks. We'll see you next time.